Godzilla Minus One has finally made its way to American theaters. It's safe to say I enjoyed it thoroughly. In fact, that would be an understatement. I loved it. I saw it in IMAX, so it made an enormous impression on my retinas. I was looking forward to this. Finally, another Godzilla movie that's treating the character with as much artistic merit as he deserved. For so long, I've had many internal battles trying to figure out why I love Godzilla so much, why I've invested so much of my legitimate life analyzing and witnessing this character and the history/mythology that came with it. I knew Godzilla was an immensely important and meaningful character, but how do I show that to people? How do I convince people that my hero isn't just mindless entertainment for monster needs? I didn't know for sure, but I knew that this movie looked to be my answer. After much time had passed after the last live-action Japanese feature, this was a new opportunity to show yet another angle of Godzilla that people maybe didn't think about. And by God, they did it. They delivered. Godzilla Minus One is not a story about Godzilla. Takashi Yamazaki uses Godzilla as a vessel to tell a distinctly Japanese story. A story decades upon decades in the making. This is a story about the sins of the past. Moving on, but most importantly, Godzilla Minus One is about redemption. Koichi is a kamikaze pilot in the last months of World War II, but the decision to refuse his duties and fake his plane's malfunction is the very thing that stirs every event that takes place in this man's life from here on. Koichi, forced to bear the cultural straitjackets of Imperial Japanese rhetoric, is too fearful to give his life away on a silver platter for a war that's lost its cause, lost its way, a losing battle that has already run its course. He doesn't want to die, not like he's been told to by the government he's supposed to owe everything to. One night, an aquatic dinosaur-like creature walks upon the shores of Odo Island and terrorizes his men. Koichi has an opportunity to finish this creature with the guns of a plane that he was supposed to die in, but he doesn't have it in him. Godzilla, as this thing is called by the locals, murders all of them, except for Koichi. Him and Tachibana, a lead mechanic on the island, are the only ones to survive. He didn't do his duty, and he paid dearly for it. He was supposed to die, but he didn't. Suddenly, the desire to stand for your right to live against the orders of a tyrannical government have affected far more people than he wanted. He comes home to a destroyed Japan, one that rejects him for surviving the unsurvivable, blaming him for the loss of the war, blaming him for the loss of innocent people. He's casted out, shunned, called a coward for not sacrificing his life for others. Thing is, he believes it. He meets Noriko, a woman whose family was killed during the raids, and Akiko, an orphaned infant Noriko vowed to take care of. Regardless of his guilt, regardless of his pain, his life still goes on. It evolves, it changes in an instant, with or without his say-so. Suddenly, he has a family to take care of. Suddenly, he has a daughter. Suddenly, he has a woman he cares for immensely. He gets a job as a sea mine retriever, and everything seems to work itself out. He has a life, but something's not quite right. Not because he doesn't love Akiko, not because he doesn't love Noriko, but because of Bushido. Bushido was a moral code embraced by samurai, as well as the larger Japanese culture at the time, that adhered to the honorable death, dying for valor, that dying in battle was the greatest way a man could end his life. Surrender was something completely and utterly forbidden. If you gave in to the enemy, it was seen as worse than dying, infinitely worse. A dishonorable act of cowardice that puts to shame your entire family, your legacy. This terribly ruthless moral code is the very reason the Imperial Japanese Empire was able to achieve what it achieved. This is why Japan was able to conquer most of Eastern Asia during the war. This is why the United States military, the strongest army the world had ever seen, truly met their match in the Pacific theater the war called home. This viciousness, this fear of dishonoring oneself, one's legacy, dishonoring the emperor and your culture, and the promotion of death for valor and pride, drove Japanese soldiers to be unstoppable machines. They simply wouldn't give up. But this backfired horribly. Maybe Japan's rigid and absolutist outlook on death for glory gave a lot more people a death wish they didn't need to have. Suicide attacks, the kamikaze, refusing to surrender and paying the consequences. Japan lost too many people. They treated life cheaply. And paid. Oh, they paid. Sooner or later, all their resources couldn't keep up. Bushido itself, quite frankly, killed all of their own soldiers when they needed them most. The Japanese government's refusal to surrender to the United States was repaid by one of the most horrifying events in human history. The immense impact of 2 atom bombs falling on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the small but still important notion of the Soviets finally declaring war was enough to end it. The war was over. But was it really? What's missing here? Well, the people. The people are missing. The The soldiers are missing from that story. What about their war? They've been told to never surrender under any circumstances. Yet their own government did the unthinkable. What now? You can't just erase years upon years of propaganda and conditioning. You can't just tell a soldier that's been trained from the beginning to choose death and sacrifice himself for the entire empire to simply just live their life like it never happened. Many of them were meant to die, trained to die, lived to die, to shoot their planes into enemy crafts. The kamikaze were designed to be disposable. If you're a kamikaze, you're already dead. How do you think they felt? Betrayed? Maybe some. How many do you think adapted well to going back to regular civilian life? Do you think they valued their sudden value? They were told everyone has their own destiny. Theirs was to serve a cause, to pay for that cause. And they did. They all did. Koichi is so emotionally crippled by the loss of his friends, by way of his refusal to serve the country's extreme wishes. Was he wrong for valuing his own life? Is he actually a coward? How could he have made the right decision if everyone he knows is dead? This is Koichi's struggle. Koichi is horrified of living. He's scared to have a new life, because the fact he's alive seems to be an impossibility on every metric. Everything is telling him he has no right to be alive, by circumstances, by the culture he was raised by, but not by the people he loves. Noriko, Akiko, Sumiko, his new work friends, are all his blessings that the sins of the past keep distracting him from. He was given a new life without asking for it. So many people now love Koichi for the man they know him to be. He has value. He has loved ones now, all from his own fruition. But he feels like it's a dream, a fantasy. How could this be real? How am I cheating without trying to cheat? Those men I had forsaken all had families. I was supposed to die just like them. Why am I still here? He won't let Akiko call him dad. He chooses not to marry Noriko even though he loves her because he's afraid, completely unaccepting that his life has changed for the better because he simply doesn't feel like he deserves it. He can't accept that he's alive. He can't accept that he's allowed to live, allowed to have something, a family, joy, breathing, eating, laughing. He won't accept it, and it tortures him. His cowardly behavior is directly linked to that sin on that one night, or one monstrous thing washed up on that silent beach of Odo Island. This is where Godzilla comes in. Godzilla -1 chooses to treat the character of Godzilla as a vessel to tell the story of a fearful man seeking to redeem himself for his mistakes, rooted in the cultural horrors and contradictions of Bushido in Japan. Godzilla represents a few things in this incarnation. The nuclear disaster aspect is toned way down, not so much in the actual interpretation of the character, but more so in the fact that it's not actually focused on that much. What matters is what Godzilla means to Koichi, and what Godzilla can give to a greater Japan. Godzilla is the Grim Reaper in Koichi's life, the harbinger of his mistakes and regrets, haunting him always, as a result of his ultimate failure to protect his friends. He just keeps coming. He won't die, and he consistently threatens Koichi's life throughout the story. Not just Koichi himself, but his loved ones, his co-workers, and Noriko, a woman who's chosen to stick by his side no matter what, the woman he's too much of a coward to call his wife. Godzilla attacks Tokyo and reduces Japan to ashes, reversing Japan's spiritual and financial progress, and killing Noriko. After Noriko is pronounced dead, Koichi breaks. He needs to defeat Godzilla. The plan to kill Godzilla is wonderfully original, one that has never been attempted in the series thus far, but Koichi does not care. He feels he must do what he couldn't. Kill Godzilla. By act of kamikaze. Finally he can accept himself. Maybe he can finally die like he was told he was supposed to so long ago. That struggle extends to more people. This not only becomes a mission to redeem himself, it's a mission to redeem Japan. Ex-Navy veterans are tasked with front-running the mission to kill Godzilla, and many of them bail out. The memories of the war are too much to bear for some, but many stay too. This is their chance. This is their chance to use these ships, weapons, equipment, planning, to push Japan forward into the wingspan of redemption. The poor cheapness of the Japanese Empire's outlook on human life can end by finally using their skills to do good. All of these veterans band together to expel the very thing that represents the old world ghosts that haunt the new Japan. The phantom of horror that won't stop reaping. The carelessness, the ignorance, the wrath, the pettiness of Bushido. The ideology that took over Japan and brought it to its knees is represented by Godzilla. In this story, they mean the same thing. They are the same entity. Koichi chooses to fly his plane of explosives into Godzilla's mouth. This is his chance to do what he felt he couldn't, to finally do it. Suicide. The honorable death. But something's wrong. Something snaps. Suddenly, the love of the people he's grown to love, his daughter, his work family, and Noriko are too powerful to ignore. The words of a friend he thought he betrayed long ago, Tachibana, ring through his head. Live. Kamikaze, the ultimate sacrifice. In an instant, Japan's last stranglehold of Bushido is evaporated. Koichi can let go. He can move on. He chooses to eject, to live, refusing Bushido to live on, so no more people of Japan have to adhere to it. Godzilla is killed violently. All of Japan's cultural misgivings of the past are blown to dust for a brighter future. One of love, one of nurture, one that values the individuals of its land, one that can let its citizens live their lives with the people they love. Killing Godzilla means Japan is let go from its shackles, the shackles that left Japan on the brink of extinction. This story is a distinctly Japanese story. The struggles between the warrior ideology of Japan's seasoned history and the unavoidable moral conundrums that directly contradict the ideology is a story only Japan could tell. The horrors of the Japanese Empire, the kamikaze, the invasions, the fear, and the momentary military might that it stirred are permanently tied to Japanese history and are scars not easily forgotten. And what better character to tell this story through than the monster that those scars helped create? I'm so eternally grateful that I watched Godzilla Minus One, that I'm alive to witness it. Everything this movie tries to do seems to appeal to me specifically. The writing, character-centric story, grand spectacle, real-world themes and messages, all taking place in a time period that I am personally very interested in. Early Showa-era Japan has always intrigued me, from the clothing, advertising, overall cultural zeitgeist. I have genuinely always loved it, as I've grown up my entire life seeing media, typically associated with older kaiju eiga, mind you, revolving and taking place in that time period, anywhere from the 40s to the 70s. It's strange, but it's true. I've seen this character bloom and blossom over the course of my entire short life, and seeing him take part in such a culturally significant story makes me truly honored to have been conscious when seeing it. Countless times, media and fiction that has inspired me has always had its peak in a time long before I was conceived. So for me, seeing a movie like this makes me realize how lucky I am that I was born at the perfect time to witness this as an adult. This might be one of the best Godzilla movies, at least top 5, top 3 even. It's not as well shot as Shin Godzilla. It's not as historically significant as the 1954 original, but by God they did it. I love all Godzilla movies. The good ones, the not so well made ones, all of them. The Godzilla series is a mixed bag of beautiful ideas with varying levels of successful execution. But when they succeed, I succeed. Godzilla Minus One is a movie I can be proud to pass on to others, maybe even my own family one day. And although it's new, and hasn't had the time to truly settle in like the decades-old entries of yesteryear, I couldn't be more glad to love Godzilla.
Special